Welcome back to Act Now. I'm Julianna Forlano. We're coming up on our interview section. Heidi Sieck, co-founder of VOTEPROCHOICE, is joining us today. Hi, Heidi. How are you?
Hi, Juliana. I'm doing great, but once again, we're talking about a subject that we wish we weren't.
Yes. I mean, there's some slight good news. Texas's near total abortion ban has been temporarily blocked after that U.S. federal judge ruled that it violated the constitutional right to abortion in the first legal challenge to Senate Bill 8. Talk about the significance of that ruling.
Well, it's been a really tough few months for those of us in reproductive rights and therefore for everyone. So before we dive into the specific details, I want to caveat by saying I'm not an attorney. So the way that I approach these issues is really practical about how it actually impacts people and strategies how we can continue to expand reproductive freedom. So I want to make that caveat first. So as most folks know, on September 1st, Texas enacted an extreme 6-week abortion ban. And it was a real innovation after 30, 40 years of an overly funded anti-choice minority attempting to find different ways to chip away at access to abortion directly. So this Texas law went into effect September 1st, signed into law by Greg Abbott, who is up for re-election next year. So vote for his opponent, please. So the Texas law goes into effect. And what it does is it essentially bans abortion at 6 weeks, basically 2 weeks after you miss a period. And it allows for any person anywhere in the United States to file a lawsuit against whoever is helping someone get an abortion or providing an abortion. So your doctor, your nurse practitioner, your Uber driver could be sued. So
the enforcement to private citizens and not prosecutors seems to be a turning over of what we know of justice in this country.
That is the innovation. So even bigger picture, what I want folks to keep in mind is Roe v. Wade is the constitutional protection of abortion. It is a basic floor to access. And what it says is that abortion cannot be restricted in the first trimester, which is 0 to 13 weeks. Some states can put some restrictions, health safety restrictions during the second trimester, which is 14 to 26 weeks. And then the third trimester is states can prohibit abortions directly. That's 27 to 40 weeks. So what we're dealing with is direct 6-week abortion ban in the first trimester, which is obviously egregiously against the protections of Roe. So that's what SB 8 did. Terrifyingly, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the level of the court right before you get to the Supreme Court, allowed this ban to stay in effect. And that's unprecedented because the other district courts across the country, when these abortion bans came up during the Trump administration and before, overturned it because on its face, it clearly goes against the first trimester protections of Roe. Obviously, 0 to 13 weeks, no restrictions. This is a 6-week abortion ban. But this Fifth Circuit allowed this 6-week abortion ban to stay in place. Unprecedented. So it goes to the Supreme Court for review, and the Supreme Court, in what they're called the shadow docket, says, oh, we're not going to deal with this as a procedural issue. We'll take it up later once it flows through the regular circuit court experience, right? And so that means that the law was allowed to go into effect, and abortion was stopped in Texas for a month. It's been that way for a month. So you're hearing stories of pregnant people who are traveling all across the country to get access. Abortion clinics have shut down. They've stopped providing services after 6 weeks, and it's just horrible. It is a horrible situation. So the Biden administration did go ahead and sue Texas, saying they based their argument on the fact that, hey, this actually federal precedent is protection of abortion through the first trimester. This law clearly on its face is preventing that. And that lawsuit went into effect, I think, September 9th. The Biden administration sued 9 days after the law went into effect. And then last week, on October 6th, actually this week, 2 days ago.
Feels like a week.
Yeah, I know. It's every day. Judge Robert Pittman, who's a federal district court judge in Austin, Texas, he was appointed by Barack Obama, issued a 113-page ruling that sided with the Biden Department of Justice suit and said, this has got to stop. And it actually instructed state court judges and clerks who have the power to enforce this egregious Texas law to stop enforcing it. Mm. So that's a win. That's a win. Mm-hmm. So that's great. However, two things. One is that the innovation of this horrible Texas law said that if this law is appealed and it's gone through all the court systems and it is overturned and found to be able to stand, that any abortions that happened during that time, folks could sue for those pregnancies. So if the Texas abortion clinics start providing services now, any pregnancies that are happening now, any abortion care that's happening now, if this suit is overturned or if this ruling is overturned by the Fifth Circuit or the Supreme Court, wow, folks could sue for the pregnancy. So the abortion clinics in Texas are kind of playing a game of like, what do we do? And I'm proud to say that Whole Women's Health of Texas has decided to continue to provide abortion services. It's a mess.
It's an incredible, mind-blowing thing. If we take ourselves down to sort of that level of, oh, I'm pregnant. Now I have 2 weeks in which to decide what to do. Yep. 2 weeks is certainly not enough if you really want to have enough time to, depending on the situation, what that might be. I mean, when I get told I need a blood test, it takes me 4 weeks to get to Quest. Totally. It's just insane. And then these young women or whatever age women, I mean, you have to be young enough in order to have a kid, young enough women. I'm just trying to put myself in their place. It's like, oh, now I have to check the law and see if I'm going to let me follow what's happening in the federal court. It's not like people are planning on getting pregnant and then having to think about an abortion and then having to check out the court law. And, it just seems very, very stressful on women.
Oh, it's horrible. And again, we should point out, it's not just women, it's non-binary, trans, LGBTQIA people, and everyone who is in community and relationship to that pregnant person. I mean, this is where I feel very strongly about the fact that this issue is not a women's issue. It is not a women's issue. This is an economic justice issue. This is a family issue. I want to remind people that 1 in 4 people who are able to get pregnant have an abortion. And 2/3 of those are already mothers. These are decisions about people's freedom, their economic justice, control over their lives, control over their bodies. I mean, so many stories you hear are about folks that just have economic challenges that they cannot meet or care for another child.
I mean, it's funny to me that this is happening in Texas. There's some irony there. Texas, they want the wall. They've got the border wall. There's the whole immigration crisis. They saying that the U.S. has too many people. We don't want your kids. And they're treating people inhumanely. And at the same time, they're saying, all the kids you want, no abortions. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's one interesting maybe irony is that Roe v. Wade itself is a case that was generated from Jane Roe, who was a woman who got pregnant in Texas and couldn't have access to abortion. So in 1973, Roe v. Wade itself is about a woman not being able to have access to an abortion. And so here we are, full circle, right? And I'm very mindful of that because, again, one of the things that I want folks to really understand is this abortion ban in Texas is not something new. This is just an innovation of an overly funded anti-choice political machine that made a decision in the early 80s that abortion was going to be a thing that could be used to activate a certain group of people to vote with the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. We are a pro-choice nation. And I think you can kind of feel it now with this tech. Men are waking up, folks are waking up for what's really happening. But for the last 50 years, ever since Roe was decided, there's been this political strategy to try to limit reproductive rights access to both activate a certain group of voters, but also because this is a certain perspective of white supremacist political leaders who want to control people. They want to control women. They want to control reproductive rights. They want to control folks. They truly believe that folks should not have reproductive freedom in America.
We've talked about the use of abortion and reproductive rights as a cudgel and as a political tool. Were you, in that vein, were you surprised that the Supreme Court did not take up this case? Or to me, it seems like the Supreme Court is going to have to put this case off until election time, either when Joe Biden is back up for election. You know, if they're just using it to angry up their base and get voters to come out and basically vote against their own best interests. Your thoughts about what happened with this particular case?
Well, you know, folks are going to come on and say John Roberts would never overturn Roe. It might be true, which makes Brett Kavanaugh the swing vote. So, but I want to go back to 30, 40 years ago. This overly funded anti-choice minority infrastructure included incredible investment in the recruitment and training of conservative justices across the country. So there is an infrastructure that has been cultivating, curating federal justices and judges throughout the country for 40 years. And the culmination of this is a 6-3 Supreme Court with 2 stolen seats on it. And that is why the Supreme Court itself has political manipulation in it. Now, Amy Coney Barrett showing up at the McConnell Institute last month saying, I am going to prove to you that we are not political actors. It's like, okay, gaslight us much, please. But right. The fact is that there is a political bent to the Supreme Court now. Brett Kavanaugh is a political operative. Amy Coney Barrett is clear about her perspectives on abortion rights. And we even have some behind the scenes camera footage from some conservative political conventions. I think it was CPAC, where there's politicians saying, oh yes, Amy Coney Barrett's going to write the opinion to overturn Roe. And we're very happy that she's on the court. So, but this is the long game of the strategy that does not reflect the pro-choice values of this country. So, now, again, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a legal scholar in any stretch, but this is what I do know is that there is a case, the Mississippi case, the 15-week abortion ban that's going to be coming up for the Supreme Court. They're going to hear the oral arguments on December 1st. So everyone, please be ready to take to the streets maybe in December 1st. And they are going to really consider a 15-week abortion ban and any limitations on pre-viability restrictions. So this is an direct overturn of precedent of Roe. They could make the decision by June. And that is, yes, it's right before the midterms, but it does totally activate a base. And also, Amy Coney Barrett and the Supreme Court can make the case because all of these egregious abortion bans and all these horrible state laws have been passed over the course of the last 20, 30 years, and it's only gotten worse under the previous presidential administration. The court actually has data to make the case that the country does want restrictions to abortion because this overly funded anti-choice minority has been able to pass all of these laws. So that is it's a cultural case that will give her and that Supreme Court minority enough fodder to be able to write a decision like that. So, you know, maybe that's true. John Roberts will hold steady. Maybe Brett Kavanaugh will be the swing vote, but we know that there's a lot at stake and it's really precarious for us legally.
Well, we've had you on the show before. We always have you on to talk about this, and in your work as the co-founder of Vote Pro-Choice, give us that number of people who support reproductive rights.
This is what I need folks to remember. This is the most important part of this segment, which is we are a pro-choice nation. Over almost 80%, 77% of the people in this country do not want Roe v. Wade overturned and want access to abortion. 77%. Democrats, Republicans, socialists, independents, everybody. And so of course, I want to caveat that by saying that folks may have nuanced approaches to this issue. They may have certain perspectives of, yeah, maybe there should be limitations or whatever. But the bottom line is that folks understand reproductive freedom is personal freedom. It's about economic justice. It's about autonomy. It's critically important. So 77% of us are pro-choice in some respect, at least.
Well,
And
it would be very poetic to just let it end right there. But I did have this other question that I wanted to talk to you about related to this. Back on the 24th of September, the U.S. House made a bid to nullify this Texas abortion bill. They passed a reproductive rights bill that would codify into federal law the right to abortion. It was obviously a very partisan vote, and it's not likely to pass the Senate. Do you think it's important that the Congress act in this way, even though it's not likely to pass?
Well, let's talk about strategy, right? Yes, absolutely. We have to get the Women's Health Protection Act passed. Must. That codifies the protection of Roe into federal law. But Congress has passed it, and the Senate, of course, has stalled. There's an issue of the filibuster. So that's a problem. So again, filibuster reform, important. But here's the thing.
We were just talking about that in the segment before this, that the reason that McConnell decided he would be okay with raising the debt ceiling is because Biden said, well, maybe we'll have to tinker with the filibuster. And I thought maybe once the American public smelled the blood in the water that, if we tinker with the filibuster, we can actually get the programs passed that the majority of Americans would like. And then they would push for that. And
100%. Filibuster reform is extremely important. But the point I want to make, though, is that we are looking in the wrong direction. We're looking at the courts and Congress to solve all our problems on this reproductive rights issue right now. And they're not going to solve our problems. They're not, because we already have all these restrictions all across the country that have been passed for the last 20, 30 years. So the focus has to be in the state houses now. These are elected officials that are making these ridiculous laws that are not reflective of our country. So we have got to start really focusing on states. Like when I was saying at the beginning of this section, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, is up for re-election in 2022. We have got to get him out of office. That is critical, because then we can start passing laws in Texas that can protect reproductive freedom and stop this crap. Because all of the things that are going to the courts are state laws. They're state laws. So why don't we start really looking where we can have influence on the policies that are getting made, so we don't have this impact that are happening to the people in Texas right now? Those are things that can happen sooner than filibuster reform or rebalancing of the Supreme Court. And that's that's the whole point of the strategy that we focus on at Vote Pro-Choice, is go where the laws are being made. Let's start to have our local and state elected offices reflect the pro-choice nation that we are. Because the fact is, we have not put the amount of investment in that infrastructure, investment in that leadership pipeline that the anti-choice minority has. And now this is the fruition. This is their investment is coming to fruition. Their garden has blossomed now. And the fact is that it's not reflective of the reality of people's lives. And unfortunately, part of their infrastructure includes a significant amount of propaganda that they fill with fake medical services, these fake clinics that they're funding that give lie to people. They actually target even pro-choice progressives to make us think that that the Democrats are egregiously overstepping when it comes to reproductive freedom. And it's all propaganda and lies. And what bothers me a lot is that even the Democratic Party and the progressive community are not often willing to talk about abortion and reproductive rights freely, because they've taken on the shame and the stigma of this issue.
Cori Bush came out and spoke.
Gotta stop.
You saw Cori Bush speak about her own abortion story?
Yes, and Barbara
Unbelievable.
Lee and Representative Jayapal. Yes, the fact is, again, 1 in 4 women have had an abortion, and 2/3 of those are mothers.
Mhm.
And that's my story. That's their story. It's like it's the story of all of us.
Mm. Mm. Heidi Sieck, co-founder of Vote Pro-Choice. Thank you so much for all the work that you do to help elect
Mhm.
pro-choice electeds at every level, including the state level. Thank you so much for being on the program with us. I look forward to I mean, it was kind of a win with the federal court, but under such circumstances, it's
We
hard
have
to
to be hopeful.
celebrate.
We have to be hopeful. I mean, we got to be bold, and we have to be strong, and we have to pay attention to those state and local elections. Before, as I sign off, I do want to remind everyone in 2021 there are 45,000 races on the ballot in 31 states. These are going to be state and local offices. We have to pay attention to those. So as we look toward Congress and the midterms and all of the things that are happening in 22, don't forget about your state legislatures. Run for office, find your representatives, support down ballot pro-choice champion candidates. That is how you have power in your local communities, and you can protect reproductive freedom right where you are.
Heidi Sieck, co-founder of Vote Pro-Choice. Thank you so much for joining us here on Act Now. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
You're watching Act TV. This is Act Now. I'm Julianna Forlano. I hope you enjoyed the show. I love the Friday show when Josh comes on. That's going to be a regular thing. Heidi is always, she's always so great coming on whenever something like this happens. She's always makes herself so available to us, and we always really appreciate that. Don't forget to share and like and comments and whatever. Boost up the algorithm so other people can maybe see some talk that's not going to make you want to jump off a ledge. That's what we hope to do here at Act Now. Again, we are on Wednesdays and Fridays. You can find us all over the place, anywhere you can find Act TV. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching.